Episode 20. Episode 21, the Tag Team Champions Meetup. Welcome back to Hidden and Distorted History of the Church, where we uncover the lesser-known truths about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or the Mormons. My goal is to reveal the authentic historical facts behind the Mormon Church. Recap. Last time, we exposed the brewing coup within the Fayette branch of the newly formed Church of Christ, revealing the likely staged conversion of Sidney Rigdon, a calculated move orchestrated by Oliver Cowdery and Parley P. Pratt. We also uncovered the real reason behind Joseph Smith's sudden decision to uproot his followers from New York and relocate them to Ohio. This week, we're diving even deeper. We'll uncover how Joseph Smith exploited the trust of the new church members, strategically placing his loyalists in positions of power, the purpose behind the mission to Missouri, and how they broke the law doing so. Last time we saw Joseph sending Oliver Cowdery, Parley P. Pratt, and others on a mission to Missouri to convert the First Nations in native territory, far beyond the reach of regular citizens. But what really happened? By January of 1831, Oliver Cowdery and his companions had been thrown out of 2 Quaker towns in Ohio, rejected by multiple First Nation bands, and eventually made their way to Jackson County, Missouri, a region that would later play a pivotal role in the LDS timeline. But not just yet. Parley P. Pratt recounts their grueling journey. We traveled on foot for 300 miles through vast prairies and through trackless between, and the bleak northwest wind always blowing in our faces with a keenness which would almost take the skin off the face. After much fatigue and some suffering, we all arrived in Independence, in the county of Jackson, on the extreme western frontiers of Missouri and of the United States. But what were these so-called missionaries really doing? They were illegally attempting to convert the natives of the Delaware and Shawnee nations. They didn't have the necessary permits from Indian Affairs. Back then, one couldn't just waltz onto a reservation and start preaching. No, they needed official authorization, something they conveniently didn't bother with. Enter Richard Cummins, the man overseeing the Missouri reservations. He was the one who kicked Cowdery and his crew off the land. But that didn't stop Oliver. He decided to go over Cummins' head and petition General William Clark. Yes, that William Clark, from the Lewis and Clark expedition. Fortunately, we have access to Cowdery's desperate plea to Clark, courtesy of the Kansas State Historical Society. As I have been appointed by a society of Christians in the state of New York to superintend the establishing missions among the Indians, I doubt not. But I shall have the approbation of your honor and a permit for myself and all who may be recommended to me by that society to have free intercourse with the several tribes in establishing schools for the instruction of their children, and also teaching them the Christian religion without intruding or interfering with any other mission now established. However, Richard Cummins wasn't about to let this slide. He informed General Clark about the incident, and we also have his account. A few days ago, 3 men, all strangers to me, went among the Indians, Shawnees and Delawares. They say for the purpose of preaching to and instructing them in religious matters. They say they are sent by God and must proceed. They have a new revelation with them, as they're their guide in teaching the Indians, which they say was shown to one of their sects in a miraculous way, and that an angel from heaven appeared to one of their men and 2 others of their sect, and shewed them that the work was from God, and much more and secular. I have refused to let them stay or go among the Indians unless they first obtain permission from you or some of the officers of the general government who I am bound to obey. I am informed that they intend to apply to you for permission to go among the Indians. If you refuse, then they will go to the Rocky Mountains. Now, why does this matter? Why bring up their blatant disregard for the law? Well, Cummins drops a bombshell in that last line. I am informed that they intend to apply to you for permission to go among the Indians. If you refuse, then they will go to the Rocky Mountains. Joseph had already laid the groundwork for moving to the Rockies long before Brigham Young ever led the so-called Saints there in the late 1840s. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. It was a premeditated fallback plan in case things went south. So what happened next? The Church of Christ missionaries were denied access to the reservations, with some of them settling in Independence, Missouri. This location, trust me, will be crucial later on. Keep it in mind, the missionaries weren't ready to admit defeat just yet. We're told, after the missionaries' unsuccessful petition for a license to establish a school, church leaders considered other possible avenues for extending contact to the Indians, but these efforts met with little success. A revelation received in July 1831 instructed Sidney Gilbert to establish a store and apply for a license to trade or send goods also unto the Lamanites, and then the gospel may be preached unto them. Let's break this down. Since they couldn't legally preach to the Native Americans, what was their next move? They schemed to use a general store as a front, and I have to assume that Oliver Cowdery, being the presiding leader of this group, was the one who conveniently received this revelation. Their plan was simple: set up a store, trade goods, and while they were at it, preach the gospel to the natives. Illegally. What a con! And yet, people still wonder why there are persistent claims of dishonesty within the church. Well, this is Exhibit A. When the law shut them down, they didn't stop. They found a way to work around it. This wasn't about religious freedom. This was about manipulation, plain and simple. Part 2, Ohio and more. Joseph was nothing if not cunning. Remember how I mentioned his habit of using church members to support him financially so he could avoid working? Well, once he got to Kirtland, things escalated quickly. Joseph and Sidney Rigdon were now set to receive a $1,200 allowance from the church. Yes, that's right. While the church members struggled, Joseph and Sidney were living on a generous stipend. But that wasn't all. Upon his arrival in Kirtland, Joseph conveniently had another revelation, this one dictating where he and Emma would stay until the saints built homes for him and Sidney. Surprise, surprise, Joseph and Emma ended up living with the Whitney family. The Whitneys were successful store owners, and they generously opened the apartment above their store to the expectant couple. This connection would prove critical in the long run, with Joseph even going so far as to refer to Elizabeth Ann Whitney as Mother Whitney. Keep that name in mind. This family would play a major role later on. Shortly after arriving in Kirtland, Joseph makes a claim that sounds like typical Smith. The branch of the church in this part of the Lord's vineyard, which had increased to nearly 100 members, were striving to do the will of God, so far as they knew it, though some strange notions and false spirits had crept in among them. With a little caution and some wisdom, I soon assisted the brethren and sisters to overcome them. The plan of common stock, which had existed in what was called the family, whose members generally had embraced the everlasting gospel, was readily abandoned for the more perfect law of the Lord, and the false spirits were easily discerned and rejected by the light of revelation. Rigdon's group had already been practicing communal living, but of course Joseph had to come in and declare they were doing it wrong. Only he had the true revelation, naturally. What followed was Joseph taking full control, managing resources, and reshaping the community to fit his vision. This move gave birth to what would later be known as the Bishop's Storehouse, an institution still found in large LDS communities today. And guess where the first one was located? That's right, the N.K. Whitney & Co. General Store with Joseph at the helm. Most members went along with this, but as usual, there were dissenters. And as always, Joseph conveniently received another revelation to put them in their place. Here's how it went. Hearken, O ye elders of my church whom I have called. Behold, I give unto you a commandment, that ye shall assemble yourselves together to agree upon my word, and by the prayer of your faith ye shall receive my law, that ye may know how to govern thy church, and have all things right before me. And I will be your ruler when I come, and behold, I come quickly, and ye shall see that my law is kept. He that receiveth my law and doeth it the same is my disciple. And he that saith he receiveth it and doeth it not, the same is not my disciple, and shall be cast out from among you. For it is not meet that the things which belong to the children of the kingdom should be given to them that are not worthy, or to dogs, or the pearls to be cast before swine. And again, it is meet that my servant Joseph should have a house built in which to live and translate. So there it was. Joseph essentially told his followers that if they didn't accept him as the supreme leader, they were unworthy, sinners even. And after chastising them, he demanded they build him a house. Talk about audacity. With every passing day, Joseph's character and lust for power became clearer. He was no longer just a prophet to his followers. He was shaping himself into a tyrant. Joseph may have seemed untouchable in Kirtland, but even there he faced opposition. Take Mrs. Hubble, for example. Just like Orson Hyde back in Fayette, she claimed to have the power of prophecy, challenging Joseph's authority. And what did Joseph do? The same thing he always did. He conjured a revelation out of thin air to squash the competition. Here's what he said: "O hearken, ye elders of my church, and give ear to the words which I shall speak unto you. For behold, verily, verily I say unto you, that ye have received a commandment for a law unto my church, through him whom I have appointed unto you, to receive commandments and revelations from my hand. And this ye shall know assuredly, that there is none other appointed unto you to receive commandments and revelations, until he be taken, if he abide in me. But verily, verily I say unto you, that none else shall be appointed unto this gift except it be through him. For if it be taken from him, he shall not have power, except to appoint another in his stead. And this shall be a law unto you, that ye receive not the teachings of any that shall come before you as revelations or commandments. And this I give unto you, that you may not be deceived, that you may know they are not of me. Purge ye out the iniquity which is among you, sanctify yourselves before me, and if ye desire the glories of the kingdom, appoint ye my servant Joseph, and uphold him before me by the prayer of faith. And again I say unto you, that if ye desire the mysteries of the kingdom, provide for him food and raiment, and whatsoever thing he needeth to accomplish the work wherewith I have commanded him. And if ye do it not, he shall remain unto them that have received him, that I may reserve unto myself a pure people before me. Again I say, hearken ye elders of my church, whom I have appointed." This was classic Joseph. Assert his dominance and remind everyone that he alone held the keys to divine authority. Not only did he make sure no one else could challenge his power, but he also declared it a law that the saints must provide for him and Emma. That's right. Joseph made it a divine command that he and his wife be financially supported by the members. Then, there's the story of Lemon Copley, a former Shaker who owned significant property and was instrumental in Section 49 of the D&C. Copley had been a landowner, and more importantly, the newly arriving saints from Colesville, New York, were set to settle on his 1,000 acres in Ohio. Copley seemed like a useful ally to Joseph at first. Between April and May of 1831, the New York Saints finally made their way to Ohio, ready to settle on Copley's farm. But it wasn't long before cracks began to show. Doctrine and Covenants Central informs us, after their visit to North Union, Lehman showed signs of being conflicted in his faith. Where he had allowed newly arriving saints from Colesville, New York, to settle on his acreage in Thompson, Ohio, he now demanded they leave. In summer 1831, fellowship was withdrawn from Lemon. Lemon Copley's wavering faith forced the saints to move out of Ohio and into Missouri earlier than planned. But don't think for a second that Copley was the only reason. Missionaries had already laid the groundwork for expansion into the West, and Missouri was already in Joseph's sights, as we've seen. Still, Joseph didn't take kindly to Copley's sudden change of heart. He excommunicated him swiftly, as was his style. Joseph wasn't about to let anyone stand in the way of his grand plans, and Copley learned that the hard way. Summary. In this episode, we exposed how Joseph Smith and his early followers disregarded the law, manipulating their way into power while exploiting church members for personal gain. Despite legal barriers, they persisted with illegal missionary work among Native Americans, and when that failed, they schemed to set up a store as a front for further proselytizing. Meanwhile, in Ohio, Joseph's grip tightened as he used revelations to command obedience and financial support, consolidating his control. His cunning tactics set the stage for the church's future, with Missouri already in his sights long before the eventual move west. Next time, we'll dive into the chaos that erupted in Kirtland, where Joseph Smith's grip on power started to slip, igniting frustration and rebellion among the members. Prepare to uncover how Smith's actions began to backfire, setting the stage for deeper conflict and betrayal. Please watch for future videos, and thank you so kindly for watching. This is the Ex-Mormon Informant signing off for the day.